G'day guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we are here to review round 7, of course being Anzac round. So a massive couple of games that have happened throughout the big weekend, starting on Wednesday night, where we start with our first game, of course being Richmond up against the Demons. And despite a pretty good fight from Richmond in this first half, Melbourne were able to flex their muscles in the second half, break away from the Tigers, and in the end they won 85-42, a 43-point win to the Demons. Now most of you probably know that Richmond have been pretty undermanned, especially the last few weeks due to a lot of injuries, and we have seen another injury occur to the Tigers. It was Jacob Hopper, so a really important midfielder for them, was subbed out at three-quarter time with a hamstring injury, and that's just going to continue to compound the Tigers' injury woes. Let's get to the game itself though. So a very low scoring start to the game with only one goal kicked in the first 20 minutes of the game. Both teams did kick another goal close to quarter time, and the Demons took a one-goal lead into the first break. Now the Tigers actually did really well the territory in the first quarter. They had 17 inside 50s to 11, but just couldn't translate that to the scoreboard, unfortunately for them. Now in a tight second term, both teams played quite a contested brand of footy, and only 6 goals were kicked between both sides at halftime, but it actually was the Tigers who took a 1-point lead into the halftime break. Now in the second half, like I said, the Demons started to really take control of the game and started to outmuscle the undermanned Tigers. They had a 5-goal to 1/3 term, took a 23-point lead into the final change, and the Demons were pretty dominant in the final quarter as well, kicking another 5 goals to 1, and ended up winning against the Tigers by 43 points in the end. So in the second half, the Demons actually kicked 10 goals to the Tigers too, which really broke the game open, and it kind of felt like that the Demons were going to break away in the end. But in the first half, they didn't play very well at all. So I mean, it's good to see the Demons won again. So they've lost a couple of games now, but they've got to be careful, because when they start coming up against the top teams in the competition, they're going to be found out if they don't kick better avenues to goal. But let's get to the statistics in this game. And on the AFL Fantasy front, of course, Max Gawn top scored with the 134, Rivers with the 107, Langdon with the 103, Stephen May with the 102, Jake Lever with the 99, and then Morris Rioli up there, highest scorer for Richmond with the 89 points. But now let's get to the votes, and of course, every single week, we're giving a 3-2-1 vote system in every single game of the season. And then at the end of the year, guys, we'll be doing a live stream to find out who will be the second ever Boundary Riders medalist. We'll be doing a live countdown of every single vote in the game, giving away a couple of awards like the Flog of the Week that we've been doing on the podcast every single week. We'll be giving the Flog of the Year, a bunch of other awards as well. We'll probably give away some prizes as well throughout the live stream. Going to be a real big event, bigger than the Brownlow, guys. People are talking about it. Players have been messaging me. It's a whole big deal. But let's get to the votes of the Richmond v Melbourne game. So in the end, 3 votes went to Max Gawn, 2 votes to Jake Lever, and 1 vote went to Turner. Had 3 goals in a very low scoring game, so I think he warranted the 1 vote. Disco Turner, very good performance from him in the end. But guys, before we get into more of this video, BR Designs, our very own design company, is your one-stop shop for all your AFL prints. We have designs for every single team, from Collingwood to the Giants, so make sure to head down to the description below and find your desired AFL design. And make sure to use our unique features with our design of scanning the QR code will actually bring up on your phone the highlight that you have the design for. And don't forget at the checkout to use code YouTube for 10% off your purchase for the next 48 hours. So getting quick, guys, let's get back into it. Let's get to the traditional Anzac Day game, Essendon versus Collingwood, and what a game it was. We were obviously live streaming this one. We had 1,000 viewers. It was absolutely insane. And in the end, of course, it was a draw. So 85-85, big moments in the final term. We'll get to that in a sec. Top scorer was Kyle Langford with the 4 goals too. Let's get to the game. Bombers are off to a hot start. They kicked 4 quick goals in the first 5 or 6 minutes. Stunned the Pies. But Collingwood really did respond throughout the remainder of the quarter and actually had more scoring shots headed into quarter time, but the Bombers did take a 19-point lead. The Pies kicked 4 quick goals in a row in the second term and took the lead for the first time in the game, but a late goal from Essendon saw them take a 1-point lead into half-time. The game really tightened up in the third quarter with only 2 goals kicked between either side, and Collingwood actually found themselves in front by the 1 point at 3-quarter time. Now let's talk about this last quarter, because it was absolutely outstanding. So, Josh Dacos actually got the Pies in front early with a quick goal, and it actually felt like they were about to take control. But then the Bombers quickly kicked 3 goals and saw themselves take the momentum, and it kind of felt like Essendon were about to win this game. But again, the Pies fought back with 2 quick goals of their own and took a 1-point lead. And by the way, this is all in the space of about 15 minutes. Then the game became a real tug-of-war battle. Neither team could actually score. The big players missed some huge chances in the final moments. Langford, of course, had that big miss in front of goal, which he usually would have kicked. And then with 40 seconds to go, Jamie Elliott dropped an absolute sitter of a chest mark, which he would usually take. And then we ended up with our first draw of the season. But I've got to say, game of the season so far. Massive game. Anzac Day, obviously a big build-up for it. And the game lived up to every single expectation. So well done to Essendon and Collingwood in the end. Now, the winner of the Anzac Day medal was Zach Merritt, but we actually haven't given him the 3 votes. We'll get to that in a second. First of all, look at the statistics. On the AFL Fantasy front, Zach Merritt did top score with the 125. McGrath with the 123. Martin with the 113. Parrish with the 107. Heppel with the 103. Nick Dacos with the 98. And Pendlebury with 98 as well. So, let's get to the votes. 3 votes in the end we gave to me and my brother. We watched this game. 3 votes went to McGrath. 2 votes did go to Merritt, and the 1 vote went to Sam Durham. A lot of people didn't actually give Sam Durham much praise for his game, but I thought he was brilliant. Up against the goalie, he really locked him down quite well. Played some really tough footy, real Anzac Day performance from Sam Durham, so that's why I got the 1 vote. And I think Cameron Ling actually gave Andy McGrath 3 votes as well. So we actually thought that he was really good in the game. Zach Merritt was brilliant, of course. We just felt like Andrew McGrath just really stood up in the big moments for Essendon. Had some big contested plays, and his kicking was outstanding coming off that half-back line. So that's why we gave him the 3 votes in the end. Let's get to Anzac Day night. GWS up against the Brisbane Lions. Big game for both teams. And it was the Giants who absolutely smashed Brisbane in the second half and ran away 113 to 59, 54-point winners in the end. Now, there was one injury concern from this game. It was Cam Archie for Brisbane, who was subbed out with a hamstring injury. So that's really tough for Brisbane. Obviously, another loss for them. Their season has not started very well after a really tough grand final loss. So Brisbane have got a lot of concerns. But let's get to the game itself. So a really tight first quarter with the Giants leading throughout most of it. But a late charge from the Lions actually saw the Giants only lead by 11 points at quarter time. Now, the Lions actually started pretty well in the second term, kicking the first 3 goals. But the Giants went on to then kick 4 of the next 5 goals, regain the lead, and then take an 8-point lead into the main break. Now, this is when the game really opened up. The Giants dominated the third quarter. They kicked 5 goals to Brisbane goalless, and they led by 38 points at 3-quarter time. This really felt at that moment that Brisbane, this is not the same Brisbane that we saw last year. This team is definitely a lot less potent up forward, and teams being able to pile on goals against them. So the Giants in the end ran away with it, keeping the Lions to just 2 goals in the second half, and the Giants ran out by 54 points. Let's get to the statistics though. AFL Fantasy front, of course, Tom Green with the 124 top scored, Kelly with the 121, Himmelberg with the 107, Callahan with the 105 along with Whitfield, and then Perryman got the 102. Now let's get to the votes. 3 votes in the end went to Tom Green, 2 votes to Harry Himmelberg, and the 1 vote went to Finn Callahan. Now we get to Friday night, Port Adelaide up against St Kilda. And despite Port Adelaide dominating large parts of this game, St Kilda were able to stay with Port for most of the night, and Port Adelaide did hold on for a 10-point victory, 82 to 72. Now, there were a lot of injuries on Port Adelaide's side throughout the whole night. First of all, it was Alia, who was subbed out with concussion at halftime, so he will miss next week. That's massive for Port Adelaide. Sam Powell-Pepper also went out of the game, landed awkwardly in a marking contest, and had to be helped off the field by trainers. Now, it hasn't been confirmed at this stage. I'm starting to record this on Saturday afternoon, but at this stage, it could be an ACL, which would be absolutely terrible news for Port Adelaide, because he had a massive year last year, Sam Powell-Pepper, and just got back from that suspension through the preseason. So that'd be big for Port Adelaide if he was out. And finally, the biggest of all of them was Connor Rozee. A hamstring injury saw him out of the game at 3-quarter time, had ice on the hammy. Not much confirmed news at this stage, being Saturday morning, but Connor Rozee obviously was the most important player for Port Adelaide and the whole team, and he was probably their best player on the ground up to 3-quarter time, so to lose him, Port Adelaide did very well to win this game, but very big out for Port going forward. But let's get to the game itself. Port Adelaide were the better team in the first quarter, but absolutely butchered it in front of goal. They kicked 1 goal, 8 in the quarter, and the Saints actually led by 7 points at quarter time. Port Adelaide started to take their chances in the second term, and a struggling St Kilda struggled to keep control, and Port Adelaide's potent forward line were able to kick 5 goals, 1, and took the lead by 10 points at half-time. This is when the injuries started to really take a toll on Port Adelaide, like I mentioned before, and St Kilda really had moments to try and take back the control against Port Adelaide, as Port Adelaide continued to waste their chances in front of goal. And despite actually St Kilda taking the lead midway through the third quarter, Port Adelaide were able to wrestle back a little bit of control, lead by 13 points at 3-quarter time. Now, to start the final quarter, Port Adelaide with 3 players down on the bench. But it really seemed like St Kilda didn't have another gear to go to when Port Adelaide lost all these players. They really needed to start making Port Adelaide run off their feet, but it just seemed like they were too apprehensive to go through the middle of the ground and take a risk. And because of that, I believe Port Adelaide were able to hold on for a 10-point win in the end. Now let's get to the statistics of this game. Ollie Wines top scored with the 113. Jace Burgoyne, really good game from him. He got the 112. Jack Sinclair with the 108. Drew with the 106. Butters with the 98. And then Houston with the 97. Rounding out the top 6 there. And now we'll get to the votes. Now, my brother gave the votes. He is a Port Adelaide fan, but he actually hasn't given a Port Adelaide player 3 votes here. So he's gone Jack Sinclair with the 3 votes, 2 votes to Charlie Dixon. He had 3 goals in the end. And then Jace Burgoyne with the 1 vote. I really love Jace Burgoyne's game off that wing. And I think he's really evolved in the preseason. He's got a little bit more bulk on him, so he's able to compete against the AFL players. But was brilliant off that wing role. And he had a couple of really important moments in that last quarter. So great game from him. So let's get to Saturday afternoon, guys. And the first game on Saturday was North Melbourne up against the Crows. And the Crows did what they had to do in the end. They won pretty convincingly by 57 points. North Melbourne came back in the last quarter, but it didn't really do much for the game. Highest goal scorer in the end was Isaac Rankin with the 4 goals. And there was one injury concern from this game. It was early for the Crows. Luke Pedler, who was subbed out with a shoulder injury at quarter time. Now, to the talking points of this game, the Crows led at every single change like you would expect. The Crows also kicked at least 4 goals in every single quarter. Now, the stats aren't everything, I will be honest with you, but the 2 stats that North Melbourne won in the whole afternoon was the turnover count and the free kick count. So, it's just another North Melbourne performance, if I'm being honest. They did what they had to do, the Crows. They got some percentage back from a couple of games this year. They get their season somewhat back on track. It'll obviously be a little bit more of a look at the Crows next week when they play in the showdown against Port Adelaide. Obviously, a lot of injury concerns for Port going into that one. But we have seen teams like Carlton last year get a pretty big win against a lower side, like it was Carlton against West Coast last year. They won by about 100 points, and it really helped them push towards the prelim final last year. So maybe the Crows can use this as like a catalyst to get their season started after a pretty poor start to it. North Melbourne, on the other hand, look, there are a couple of good signs. Cherry played really well. Zerha kicked 3 goals. McKercher looked good off halfback. But again, they used Sheasel, same old 30 touches. He had that in the third quarter. They did play him a little bit through the midfield in the last quarter, but it didn't make a lot of a difference. It's just another disappointing performance from North Melbourne, and it doesn't look like it's going to get better anytime soon. So let's move to the statistics. And on the AFL Fantasy front, of course, Harry Sheasel top scored with the 125, Dawson with the 122, Laird with the 121, McKercher with the 109, Scholl with the 106, and Davies Uniacke with the 98. Now, let's get to the votes. 3 votes in the end went to Jordan Dawson, 2 votes went to Taylor Walker, and the 1 vote went to Rory Laird. Now, the reason why Taylor Walker got the 2 votes, he may have only got 2 goals in the game, but he was involved in nearly every single score, it felt like, throughout the whole afternoon. Had about 12 or 13 score involvements. Taylor Walker was sharing it around all afternoon and was brilliant. So that's why he got the 2 votes in the end. After that, let's move to a very high scoring game at the MCG. Geelong versus Carlton. Set up as probably the game of the round, and it lived up to most of the expectations. Geelong, in the end, were able to beat Carlton, 13-point winners, and keep their undefeated run going. So highest goal scorer in the end was Jeremy Cameron with the 5 goals. Was able to seal the deal late. There was an injury concern in this game for Geelong, and unfortunately it is to Paddy Dangerfield. He did do a hammy, the same one that he did earlier in the season, and was subbed out in the third quarter. So that's really disappointing for the Cats. They did get a couple back, like Cam Guthrie this week, who had a really good performance. Tom Stewart is also out from last week, so a couple of senior players being out, but the Cats have done really well this season. They've been the standouts by quite a margin, in my opinion. Let's get to the game, though. Interesting start to this one. The Blues had some huge chances in the first quarter, but missed some crucial chances. The Cats, in the end, led at quarter time, only having the 7 scoring shots to the Blues 10. It was 5-2, 32 to Blues 2-8. 20 at quarter time and went down by 12 points. Now, the Blues fought back in the second term, but couldn't break in front. It was the story of the whole afternoon, if I'm being honest. The Cats would try to break away, but the Blues would fight back, and the Blues would try to get themselves in front, and the Cats would be able to break away with a couple of quick goals. So the Cats were kicking the straighter in the first half, and that's really the main reason why they were in front at halftime with a 19-point lead. Again, the Blues tried their hardest to come back in the third term. They kicked 3 of the first 4 goals, and were within 4 points of the lead, but the Cats kicked to a late goal to get themselves out by 11 points at three-quarter time. And in the last quarter, the Blues had 2 golden opportunities early to get in front. They missed them, and the Cats went down the other end, nailed their opportunity. The Cats went on to kick 4 quick goals, and the game was basically done. Now, despite a fight back from the Blues in the last 10 minutes, Cameron steadied the Cats with his 5th goal, and the Cats were able to run away, keep their unbeaten run alive with a 13-point win. So, let's get to the statistics on the AFL Fantasy front. Paddy Cripps with the 117, top scored with Harry Mackay. Blake Acres with the 109, Wiedering with the 107, Myers with the 106, and Cam Guthrie with the 104. So, let's get to the votes. 3 votes went to Jeremy Cameron, 2 votes to Paddy Cripps, and the 1 vote to Ryan Myers. Now let's get to Saturday night. Fremantle versus the Bulldogs. Really important game for both teams. Both teams were going into this one 3-3. Whoever won this game was going to be in the top 8. And it was the Dockers, in a very tight contest, were able to break away in the last 5 or 10 minutes to win by 4 goals. 95 to the Dockers, 71 to the Bulldogs. A couple of injury concerns, one on each side. Draper was subbed off at quarter time with a hamstring injury for Fremantle, and Cody Waitman landed awkwardly on his elbow, which he did have concerns about over the last couple of weeks, and he was subbed out with that elbow injury in the second quarter, I believe, as well. So let's get to the game. The Dockers started nicely, 3 of the first 4 goals of the game, but the Dogs actually fought their way back and were only 8 points down at quarter time. The Dogs kicked 2 early goals to take the lead for the first time in the second term. But in a tight quarter, the Dockers regained the lead and were up by 3 points at half-time. Now, I do have to quickly mention the massive first half from Bailey Dale. Can't believe this guy was a sub a couple of weeks ago because he had 19 touches, 399 metres gained, 4 score involvements, and 2 goals off halfback. He was insane. He had a great performance as well. Kind of a little bit petered off in the second half, but he was brilliant, Bailey Dale. But let's get back to the game. And the Dogs did waste some crucial chances in the third term. They kicked 1 goal 7 to Fremantle, who took their opportunities, 3 goals 3 with about 30 seconds to play. But a clutch goal at 3-quarter time by Sam Darcy was the second goal of the quarter for the Bulldogs and saw the Dockers only take a 5-point lead in the 3-quarter time. Now into the last quarter, both teams got an early goal, but then both teams in a really tight contest for about 15 minutes, there was no goals scored. But finally, Bailey Banfield broke the drought, and the Dockers got on a 3-goal run late, which got themselves back on the winners list with a 24-point win. Now let's get to the statistics in this game. Tim English, top scorer with the 141, Bailey Dale with the 134, Aish with the 118 along with Nat Fyfe, Caleb Sarong with the 107, and the Hayden Young with 100. So let's get to the votes. In the end, 3 votes went to Caleb Sarong, 2 votes to Bailey Dale, and the 1 vote to Nat Fyfe. A record for Caleb Sarong with 17 clearances in this game. He was massive through the middle, had 37 touches. He's pretty good with the disposals as well, of course, Caleb Sarong. But 17 clearances from a midfielder is absolutely outstanding. I believe that's a Fremantle record. So that's 2 records he's claimed for Fremantle this year, Caleb Sarong. He's having a wonderful year, and he's definitely polled well early in the Boundary Riders medal. Next up, guys, let's get to the first game on Sunday, which was the Gold Coast Suns up against the Eagles in a really competitive first half, but in the end, the Suns were able to break away in the third quarter and went on to win by 37 points, 112 to the West Coast Eagles 75. Jake Waterman top scored with the 4 goals. He is in amazing form for the Eagles, but wasn't enough to get them over the line in the end. And there was an injury concern from this game. Bailey Humphrey actually went into the rooms in the last quarter and then was subbed out. I believe it was for concussion protocols. So I think because he was never going to get back onto the ground, they just subbed him out and brought David Swallow in. But let's get to the game. The Eagles actually started off amazingly well with 3 quick goals to stun the Suns in the first quarter. But Jared Witts, who had an amazing game throughout the afternoon, kicked a big goal in the first term to get the Suns back momentum and only were down by 4 points at quarter time. It was goal for goal to start the second term. And at halftime, the Suns actually took the lead and were up by 3 points. And even though the Eagles kicked the first goal of the second half, the Suns then started to take control of the game, kicked 6 goals in a row, and the Suns led by 34 points at 3-quarter time. And that was basically the straw that broke the camel's back. The Suns really ran away with it in the end. The Eagles did okay in the last quarter. They did well to stay in touch with the Suns and not get blown away. But the Gold Coast Suns kept their unbeaten run at home alive with a 37-point victory. Now, I just want to actually have a special shout out for the second gamer in Jake Rogers. He is an academy product. He had 20 plus touches in this game and 4 goal assists. That's really good to see. He's definitely a player for the future for the Gold Coast and a couple of those academy players. Let's move to the statistics. And on the AFL Fantasy front, of course, Jared Witts top score with the 136. Matt Rao with the 122, Flanders with the 112, Anderson with the 111, Took Miller with the 109, and Liam Duggan with the 103. Now let's get to the votes. 3 votes went to Jared Witts, 2 votes to Noah Anderson, and the 1 vote went to Matt Rao. Really good response from Noah Anderson this week. Last week he was well held by Sydney and James Rowbottom. He really responded, had a tough first quarter, but really worked himself into the game. So really good nous from him, and really good to see for the Gold Coast. If they can start improving away from home, they should be able to make finals this year with the draw that they've got. So guys, let's get to the final game of round 7. And of course, it was Hawthorn up against the Swans at the MCG. It was Sydney who were just too classy in the end for the Hawks. Pretty big winners in the end. The Swans 118 to Hawthorn 42. So a 76-point win to the Swans in the end. Highest goal scorer was Logan McDonald. He was big for Sydney today. Had a very good game. Let's get to the game itself though. So both teams actually were really hard at the footy for the first 15 minutes, with the pressure ratings actually being over 195 for both teams. But the Swans actually broke away with 4 quick goals late in the first quarter to lead by 25 points. And the Swans started really hot in the second term with another 4 goals pretty quickly. Hawthorn did have some opportunities to get back into the game, but just wasted so many big chances, and the Swans led by 42 points at the main break. The Swans continue to dominate in the third term with 5 more goals, and I think Hawthorn, just their young players, just couldn't handle the pressure the Swans were bringing. It was one of the more pressure games that I've seen from the Swans this year, so it was a really good performance. You know, you could have seen that the Swans maybe wouldn't have came up for a big performance against a team like Hawthorn who were lower down the ladder. Sydney haven't played the best against the bottom teams this year. They lost to Richmond and they played a terrible first half against West Coast. So as a Swans fan, I was happy to see the Swans actually play out the game. The Swans led by 65 points at 3-quarter time. It was basically the same old in the last quarter. The Swans kicked 3 goals. Hawthorn only kicked 1 goal. Hawthorn's goal kicking was terrible all game, to be honest. 5 goals, 12. If they kicked a little bit better, the scoreline probably would have been a little bit better. But honestly, how the game went throughout the whole afternoon, I think this scoreline's pretty favourable to Hawthorn, to be honest. I think Hawthorn were pretty terrible, and it's pretty disappointing. I mean, Hawthorn had a pretty good game last week. I know it was against North Melbourne, but if that is the standard, that North Melbourne are lower to Hawthorn, and then Hawthorn gets smashed by 76 points, I mean, maybe it just says how bad North Melbourne are. I don't know, but it wasn't a very good performance from Hawthorn, and Sam Mitchell definitely wasn't impressed with a lot of footage of him throughout the night. So let's move to the statistics in this game. And on the AFL Fantasy front, Nick Blakey top score with the 132, Ollie Florent with the 131, Jake Lloyd with the 126, Errol Goulden with the 120, Dylan Moore, he can hold his head up high, he got 114, and Chad Warner with the 102. So let's get to the votes for the final game. In the end, the 3 votes went to Nick Blakey, 2 votes to Chad Warner, and the 1 vote went to Errol Goulden. So guys, let's get to the ladder. Of course, at the end of round 7 right now, Geelong still are on top of the ladder with 7 straight wins, have been unbeaten. Swans are in second and are playing the Giants next week, who are in third. Massive battle of the bridge games, Sydney derby, of course. Melbourne are in 4th spot. They've got a pretty good spot on the ladder at the moment. Port Adelaide are in 5th. Carlton are in 6th. Essendon are in 7th with that draw against Collingwood. Fremantle are in 8th, so at the moment they are sitting in the 8th. Gold Coast are 9th. Collingwood 10th. They'll probably get back into the 8 pretty soon. Bulldogs are 11th. The Crows, with their win, get up to 12th. Brisbane right down at 13th. Obviously, a very bad turnaround from the grand final last year. St Kilda right down at 14th position. West Coast Eagles are 15th. Don't think many people would have seen them up there. So they're doing pretty well. Richmond 16th. Hawthorn 17th. And right down the bottom, with a dismal percentage of 57.3, we have North Melbourne. Anyway, guys, that is the review for round 7. Thank you for watching or listening. If you are watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. If you are listening on Spotify, make sure to leave us 5 stars. And, of course, follow to be notified on the reviews and the podcast episodes. And this will be coming out Sunday night. So Monday afternoon, guys, 3 p.m. Melbourne time, we will be releasing part 2 of the 20th AFL team video. So make sure to get excited for that one. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we'll catch you all next week.